All right, let's get right into it. I've got a story for you today about what happens when the justice system, the very thing that's supposed to protect us, completely fails. What happens when a person is pushed so far past their breaking point that they decide to take justice into their own hands? Well, this is the story of a mother who did exactly that, delivering her own final verdict inside a packed courtroom. Just picture that for a second. A quiet courtroom, the trial is underway, and suddenly, 8 shots right into the defendant's back, in front of everyone. This one, single, shocking moment is what this entire story pivots on. It's an act of vigilante justice so raw and so extreme, it literally became legendary. So, the question is, what on earth could drive a mother to do something like this?
So the woman at the center of all of this, her name is Marianne Bachmeier. And on March 6, 1981, inside that German courtroom, she wasn't just a grieving mother anymore. In a matter of seconds, she became the judge, the jury, and yes, the executioner. She delivered her verdict, not with words, but with a pistol.
But to really understand why she did it, we have to rewind. An act like this, it just doesn't happen in a vacuum. We need to go back and understand the unbelievable tragedy that completely shattered her world and pushed her to do the unthinkable.
And here it is. This is the absolute heart of the matter. This wasn't some random act of violence. It was a direct, brutal response to the horrific murder of her little girl Anna, who was only 7. This unimaginable loss, it's the key that unlocks everything else that's about to happen.
And this goes beyond just grief. As powerful as that is, Marianne's actions were really fueled by something else, a complete and total collapse of her faith in the legal process. She became convinced, absolutely certain, that the system was about to fail her daughter. Let's dig into why. Look, her fears weren't coming from nowhere. First off, the defendant, he had a really disturbing history of prior offenses. Then, he started playing games with the court, confessing to the crime, then taking it all back. On top of that, there was all this talk about legal loopholes he might be able to use. And all of this pointed to one terrifying possibility, a lenient sentence. For Marianne, that was simply not an option. In her mind, the system was already failing Anna.
So, that brings us right back to that courtroom. Now that you have the full picture, the unimaginable grief and her bone-deep certainty that justice would not be served, let's break down the moment itself. She decided that if the court wasn't going to act, she would.
And this sequence shows you just how calculated this was. This was not a sudden, passionate outburst. No. First, she quietly moved and sat down right behind him. Then, with what witnesses called a chilling calm, she reached into her purse and pulled out the Beretta. And finally, she delivered her verdict. 8. 8 shots. Not 1, not 2, 8. She was making absolutely sure her version of justice was final. It's a number that just hammers home the brutality and the finality of it all.
So what happens next, after the smoke clears? Well, this one single act instantly turned Marianne Bachmeier into a legend, but also a deeply polarizing figure. It sparked this massive debate that tore people apart. Was she a hero who did what a broken system couldn't? Or was she a villain who just became another killer?
And the debate was intense. On one side, you had people calling her a hero. They saw her as this symbol of righteous anger, someone who fought a failing system and got the only real justice her daughter was ever going to get. But on the other side, people saw a criminal, someone who spat on the rule of law, took a life, and set a terrifying precedent for anyone else with a grievance. Ultimately, her story just forces us to confront some really uncomfortable questions about the limits of human endurance. It makes you ask, where exactly is that thin, blurry line between justice and pure revenge? And what happens when someone decides to cross it? It's a debate that is just as real and relevant today as it was back in 1981.
So I'm going to leave you with that very question. When you take everything into account, the terrible loss of her daughter, the feeling of a system letting her down, where do you land? Was Marianne Bachmeier a hero for doing what she did, or in her quest for revenge, did she go too far and become a monster herself?